Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to Laurel Leaf Networking Facebook Live. I'm speaking to you coincidentally on another beautiful sunny day, which was exactly the same position as when I did my last one. And the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is, does a hard line in negotiations work? Now, on the face of it, it might be a straightforward question, but given all the recent experience we've had, both with Brexit and with our dear friend, Mr. Trump, it actually brings out a whole wealth of topics and experience around negotiation and what works and what doesn't work. So the first thing that I thought of at the end of last week when I was looking at which topic to consider today was the very, very much live discussions around Brexit and the hard line that the EU negotiators are taking, and whether that's in their interest, whether it's in our interest. And it made me cast my mind back to an article I wrote coincidentally exactly a year ago. And it's quite extraordinary going back to pick up on this article, and I'm going to read some of this for you. I said, could mediation be the key to breaking the Brexit deadlock? Brexit negotiations continue to hit headlines, predominantly due to their lack of progress. So this is, a year ago, and where were we? It is 6 months since Prime Minister Theresa May triggered Article 50, and with just 18 months to go until Britain leaves the EU, there is still a huge amount to negotiate. Why is it why is it all taking so long? And why are we regularly being told by the EU negotiators that talks are deadlocked? Talk has already begun about what will happen if no agreement is reached, and that was a year ago. And an OECD report warning of no deal, meaning that investment would seize up, the pound would hit new lows, and the UK's credit rating would be cut. So it's quite scary what's going on now. It's quite scary to wind the clock back a year and realise that this was something that not just me, but many people were considering at that time was not working. And then in that article, I go on to talk about positional negotiation getting nowhere. So positional negotiation, which is exactly what is still being adopted by the parties in the negotiation, certainly at least publicly, has got us absolutely nowhere. So when Donald Tusk got up at the end of last week and said that our latest proposal was not acceptable, and just left it at that, and Theresa May then had to come back with her very, 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 very firm line saying that that is not helpful, that's not being respectful. We expect a response if our proposal is not acceptable. We expect that the EU should come back with reasons why it's not acceptable and a counter proposal. Now, if we had been having these negotiations in this kind of detail even a year ago, it's possible or probable, I would say, that we would have been able to make more progress by the point which we are now. But my concern and the point that I'm making about taking hard line in negotiations is that in my view as a mediator, this just doesn't work. We have many ways of looking at, as a mediator, at what taking a hard line in negotiation actually means. Some people call it a hard line, some people call it bullying, and we all know, or we're all taught, that it's not good to give in to a bully. So what happens at the national level, and that's, you know, in the negotiation or the response that Theresa May has come back with in response to the EU slapping us down and telling us that the Chequers proposal isn't acceptable, is that we take a position as well. We draw ourselves back. We either have the hackles go up, but what we don't do is we don't respond in a constructive way, and so where the mediation approach differs from the bullies approach or the hardliners approach in negotiation is that we look at what people's needs are and how we can meet them, and also meet our own needs. So the role of the mediator in going between two parties who've taken a very tough line or a hard line would be to sit down with each of them and try and analyze what it actually is that they need out of this situation, and help the participants to meet those needs, also in meeting their own needs, but without it being a situation where one party wins and the other party loses. And that's one of the big problems in the mindset that goes with taking a hard line. So to my mind, the line that the EU are taking can very easily be counterproductive. It's not in their interest to have a no deal. It's absolutely not in our interest either. But it would appear that by making the threat on our side of there being no deal, that we're escalating the risk, we're escalating the stakes, in the hope that the EU will also appreciate that it's not in their interest, and therefore we want to bring them to the table and make concessions. Now, from what I've seen publicly, it seems as if there've been few, if any, concessions that have been made by the EU, because it appears that they believe that we've applied to leave the club, and therefore they believe, or they perceive, that all of the cards are on their side. But if you take a longer term view, it seems to me that kind of logic doesn't work. Now, whether this means that this is going to go to the wire and there's going to be 23rd hour fraught negotiations in order to reach a deal remains to be seen. But looking at it from the mediator's point of view, this is all very, very unsatisfactory. And what it seems to me should have happened, as soon as we exercise the Article 50 notice, was that there should have been constructive negotiations looking at how to make the best of the situation. And at the moment, it seems to me as if both sides are intent on making the worst of the situation, even though they would say that they're not. The negotiating style and the tactics that each side are using points towards both sides not not taking into account, or at least not certainly not appearing to in public to be taking into account the other side's needs. So another example, which is another big topical example, is the way that Donald Trump believes that it's best to negotiate. Again, as apparently as a bully. Now, he seems to have had a business life where he believes that he's a great negotiator. I suspect that the strength of negotiation position that he works on is the fact that we perceive him, he is perceived as negotiating as a bully does. Now, I don't suppose that he would accept that, but he looks at a situation and thinks, well, how can I get what I want? So in a whole number of recent situations where he's been negotiating, he goes in and disrupts. He goes in and stirs things up. He makes it crystal clear, as he has done many times, that it's America first. But if you take as an example the trade negotiations that America has had with China, which has escalated because each side has taken a position that the other doesn't like. It in my view, it's very easy to argue that it's been entirely counterproductive. That the fact that tariffs have been put on goods can harm the American traders that it is intended to benefit. Now, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. Again, as a mediator, that if America is looking to improve their own position in trading terms, why would they overtly punish a country who is going to hit back in equal terms? It just doesn't make sense at all. It's such a short-term approach that it to me can't have any long-term benefit in negotiating, and it can't have the benefit of meeting the needs that you set out to meet and achieve. So I have found in mediations time and time again that the bully doesn't win, particularly where the other party is properly advised, and more often than not, the strong approach, the tough approach, the bullying approach becomes counterproductive, because you don't get what you want, and sometimes you get thrown back at you much worse than you thought, because your approach breeds a similar approach from the other side, even if it's not a bullying approach. In response to a bully, the other party will often put up the hackles, or not come to any agreement at all, and then the situation is deadlocked. So what can we do about this in order to make things more constructive? Well, we're in a situation, the emotions are high, a party feels aggrieved and wants to get a certain outcome, but isn't prepared to sit down directly with the other party because they just feel too strongly about it, and they just don't feel comfortable sitting in the same room as the other party. The role of the mediator is to try and help the parties to reach a settlement that they can each live with, which won't be perfect, but it'll be as balanced a deal as possible, bearing in mind that the needs of each party. In negotiations, parties often confuse needs from wants. I want. One of the first things we taught our children when they were little and could speak and understand was "I want doesn't get," and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with that. But to me, it's still very true. What I need is different. What I'd like to have is more different still. There are different degrees of requirements, but if a mediator can look and balance the needs of each party, then it's much easier to help the more that the mediator can understand really what each particular party needs, and not what they want. So in sitting down separately with each participant, the mediator can work through looking at the needs of the participant, and then when the mediator shuttles between the parties, it's much easier for the mediator to translate to the other party what they are hearing from the first room is what each participant actually needs, and that's the first stage to being able to help. Because if parties won't sit in the same room, can't sit in the same room, then that makes all the difference. Now, I'm painting in most of what I've said so far. I'm painting quite a negative picture. I'd like to give you an example of a mediation that I did 2 weeks ago. It was actually mediation in Scotland, and I was instructed 2.5 weeks before the mediation, and I made contact with the solicitors on each side, and also the participants themselves. And I set out in a briefing note, as well as the conversations that I had, the way in which we should work towards a settlement, but starting from that point, so starting from the 2.5 weeks before the mediation. So the mindset of the parties and of the solicitors was around how we're going to reach a settlement, and that atmosphere, that scene that had been set was crucial in getting the parties to just focus on how we're going to settle this. We have a 2.5 week opportunity as the process. We have a day when we actually sit down and meet, in order to work out a settlement that each of them could live with. So I travelled up to Scotland the day before the mediation, and I had meetings with each participants and their solicitors separately. They were very constructive meetings, and it became clear to me that the parties themselves were practical, pragmatic, commercial, and were very keen in reaching a settlement that would work for them and work for the other side. In fact, they went one stage further than that. They said that if we could reach an agreement that was acceptable to them, they wanted to re-establish the good business working relationship that they had before this dispute, which sounded like a win-win-win. But we had to take each stage as it came. But nevertheless, we all went. We had I had a good night's sleep. The other parties appeared as if they were going to have a good night's sleep when I said goodbye to them on the night before, content in the knowledge that we had set all the ground, done all the groundwork and set all the rules for negotiating a good settlement. So the morning of the meeting itself, we started at 9 o'clock. We had a very good open session with everyone involved together, and they all explained what they wanted to achieve and how they wanted to achieve it. And this quickly led into a meeting between the principals, who were senior decision makers, which was really excellent. And by 10:15 in the morning, we had a settlement, which not only involved shaking hands on a figure, but also a commitment to re-establish their good business working relationship. It was hugely rewarding and satisfying from everyone's point of view, but it couldn't have been done without the right approach being taken by the solicitors and the participants. And that connects very clearly to me with with where I started this discussion, and that is that in my view, taking a hard line in negotiation is usually not helpful. It's usually counterproductive. In this particular case, neither party took a hard line. Each party knew exactly where the other party stood. They understood what the other party's needs were. They went towards meeting them, not necessarily in meeting them, but they went towards meeting them. And it was because they were so constructive, and it was because they were so insightful about the needs of meeting the needs of the other party, that they were able to make concessions without giving away their own position, but they were able to make concessions in order to encourage the other party to do the same. And it's amazing when if you're prepared to make concessions, if you're prepared to go beyond your comfort zone, that is usually reciprocated. And in the same way, if you take a ridiculously hard line, that also is usually reciprocated, which doesn't doesn't help to bring about a workable solution. So having got to this point and having got 5 minutes left, I would be delighted if anybody wishes to raise any questions. Laura's very kindly asked if I think that we will leave the EU without a deal. For what it's worth, my view is that we won't. And the reason I say that is because, as I mentioned earlier, I think that in line with the many negotiations that I've seen, a lot of them often go to the wire. Sadly, frustratingly, but it's only when there is a gun at people's heads, sometimes, that they start to negotiate properly. It's entirely unsatisfactory, I think, in the Brexit negotiations, because it's taken up a huge amount of time, effort, cost, and unnecessarily so, because we're looking here at people who have huge experience in politics, in negotiation. In the course of the 43 years, 45 years time that we have been in the EU, we've established a reputation and a working relationship with our European partners. Why would we possibly throw that away, even if we are bound to exit? We should still be close partners. So with trading and politics connecting us, why should we and why should they threaten the good rapport and understanding that we have built up? So I think that even if it's right at the last minute, we will come to some deal. It may be that by doing it that way, it may be not as satisfactory as if it had been done in a collaborative way, because I believe that the best deals are worked on together by both sides. You have separate interests, but you should be able to find the problem in the middle and work on it together, but taking heed of each side's separate interests and needs. So I don't at the moment see any other questions, but you do have a few more minutes to ask if you wish to, and I'm happy to answer any questions offline if you would like to do so. See if you can think of any situations at the moment where discussions are stuck, whether a dispute may or may not have yet arisen, but you might want to nip a dispute in the bud. Then of course let me know. But otherwise, if there aren't any more questions, I will thank you all for watching, and I will close.